So I begin Dhamma talks with a short little chant for myself. This chant is to remind me to let the Dhamma speak through me, that it's not me, it's letting the Dhamma talk. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Yodamande se siari kalayana maje kalayanang pariyosana kalayanang. And that last line means the Dhamma is beautiful in the beginning, the Dhamma is beautiful in the middle, the Dhamma is beautiful in the end. More loudly. Very good. How's that doing? I should have done a sound check. That's better? Even more? No, it's good? Okay. Thank you. Good signals. And if I forget and my voice drops, signal some more, please. Can you control volume too or not? Not really. Maybe it's okay. I'm just checking. Okay. Because I can also readjust where this is. It's okay? Okay. So nurturing harmony, as my lovely colleagues have mentioned, this in fact was my suggestion when we were talking together about developing a theme for the year. And I was so happy that my kind spiritual friends agreed to choose it. And I offered this suggestion because my teachers, the teachers in my tradition, so very frequently mention harmony. They talk about it all the time. So it seemed like a really valuable subject theme to investigate. And outside of musical references, I don't often hear about harmony very much in the worldly life. But in the spiritual life, harmony is fundamental to practice and to the end of suffering. Harmony is a frequent and repeated topic from the Buddha and his disciples. It's a foundation for developing this path and for reaching the goal of the end of suffering. So it's helpful to remember how vital harmony is for this path and to really notice how infrequently it's encouraged or spoken about out in our daily life. Because what a difference it could make if it were more highly valued in the world. As I mentioned, we agreed to this topic last spring, long before the terrible events of October 7th and the consequent conflict since. But even before October 7th, there was bloodshed in Ukraine, Sudan, Myanmar, Mexico, here at home, and everywhere around the globe. There's never been a lack of conflict in the world. It is the case that harmony has only rarely been present in the world. And this is why our efforts to nurture harmony are so important and needed. The Buddha understood that harmony was essential in any community of people seeking to follow these teachings and in the hearts of each of us. So when reflecting and investigating on any theme, I frequently begin with the dictionary definition. So here's what I learned from the Collins Dictionary. The English word harmony is from the French, first used in English in the 1300s, meaning a joint, an agreement, or a coming together. In the dictionary, there were sort of three top definitions. The first one was agreement or accord. The second one was a consistent, orderly, or pleasing arrangements of parts, congruity. And the third one was as it related to music, simultaneous combination of tones, tones blended together into chords pleasing to the ear. So for us, those first two are the most applicable, keeping that musical reference in mind as a sort of helpful model or simile. So just a reminder, the first definition was agreement or accord. The second was an orderly or pleasing arrangement of parts. So how might harmony arise in our experience? And how do we support and sustain it? Sometimes harmony might arise on its own, just like there can be spontaneous moments when peace arises. But neither peace nor harmony persists just because they've arisen. For harmony to be present for any length of time, it needs tending and nurturing. To persist in harmony requires both intention and persistent attention to learn about what harmony is and also learn how do we support it. How do we contribute to its arising and its continuation? And in fact, we've all done that. We did that at the beginning of this retreat. The 5 precepts that we took, that some of us live by always and some of us agreed to live by during this retreat, are the primary way, a primary way for nurturing harmony. The safety that results from a community living according to the 5 precepts is a precondition for harmony. When we feel unsafe, unprotected, it is very unlikely that there will be a sense of harmony with those that present any sort of danger to us. The precepts give us that ethical basis for how we behave with others and also internally with ourselves. They define what in Pali is called sila. I'm going to translate it as virtue today. It's often sometimes also translated as morality, but morality can have some very heavy connotations in English that are not at all what virtue means. And this is how Bhikkhu Bodhi explains that difference. He says the English word morality and its derivatives suggest a sense of obligation and constraint, quite foreign to the Buddhist conception of virtue. He says this connotation of obligation and constraint probably enters from the theistic background of Western ethics. With a non-theistic framework, Buddhism grounds ethics not in a notion of obedience, but on harmony. In fact, the commentaries explain the word virtue by another word, samadhana, meaning harmony or coordination. I find that a quite lovely reflection. Virtue and ethical behavior is not what we do because of social conventions or socially conditioned ideas about right and wrong. Virtuous behavior is behavior that is harmonious. It coordinates with others. Here's a bit more from Bhikkhu Bodhi on the relationship between precepts and virtue or harmony. The sterling qualities distinguishing a person of virtue are generosity, truthfulness, patience, and compassion. By developing and mastering these qualities within oneself, a person lives in harmony with one's own conscience and at peace with fellow beings. The scent of virtue, the Buddha declares, is sweeter than the scent of all flowers and perfumes. A good person, like the Himalaya mountains, shines from afar, and wherever they go is loved and respected. The observance of virtue leads to harmony on several levels: social, psychological, and contemplative. At the social level, the principles of virtue help to establish harmonious interpersonal relations, welding the mass of differently constituted members of society with their own private interests and goals into a cohesive social order in which conflict, if not utterly eliminated, is at least reduced. At the psychological level, virtue brings harmony to the mind, protection from the inner split caused by guilt and remorse over things we regret. And at the contemplative level, virtue helps establish the preliminary purification of mind to be completed by the methodical development of serenity and insight. I then looked up the Pali words for harmony, and not surprisingly, there isn't a single word that equates one-to-one with the English term harmony. Instead, several words, many actually more than several, quite a few words, include that quality of what we mean when we use the term harmony. The various Pali words can mean things like gentleness, an absence of obstruction, accord, concord, peace, unity, evenness, amicability. Hear what a couple of very famous thinkers said about harmony. Mahatma Gandhi, happiness is when you think, when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. And Confucius, virtuous persons are those who are able to harmonize with others without conforming to them. Harmony denotes a key quality that distinguishes those who are virtuous from those who are less than virtuous. I also searched the word harmony on Sutta Central, which is an online repository of early Buddhist suttas, all of them. So many, many, thousands. And the search resulted in pages and pages of mentions from the suttas. Since harmony is inextricably linked with happiness, virtue, and peace, it makes sense that the Buddha suggested we remember harmony frequently. One refrain repeated in many different suttas was always is given as one of the descriptions of an individual or a community engaged in skillful, virtuous conduct. Either that kind of person or community gives up divisive speech. They don't repeat in one place what they heard in another, so as to divide people against each other. Instead, they reconcile those who are divided, supporting unity, delighting in harmony, loving harmony, speaking words that promote harmony. So clearly, harmony is encouraged and recommended. Ever since we chose this topic, I have, of course, been thinking about harmony in preparation for this retreat. And in the week before Christmas, I went to Woodman's grocery store, where I usually do my shopping. Those of you not from Madison may not know Woodman's. Woodman's is a huge grocery store, open 24 hours a day with an extensive inventory of groceries. Very diverse and extensive. It isn't fancy at all, but it almost always has what I'm looking for, including a wide variety of international cooking ingredients. And therefore, the clientele is also very diverse, both internationally and economically. I almost always hear a number of languages different other than English when I am there. And the prices are very low. So the clientele also is a range of economic categories. So being so close to Christmas, it was especially busy, and the shoppers seemed more unhappy and distracted than usual. And noticing the sort of chaos, the tension, the agitation, and reflecting on it, I recognized what wasn't present. It was such a clear example of an absence of harmony. No one was intentionally rude or malicious or hostile or mean. It was just that they had no interest or intention in harmony. They were isolated and self-involved, trying to get what they needed for the upcoming holiday. People were disconnected from others and preoccupied with their own worries and needs in ways that were more obvious to me than usual. They were checked out, clueless to anyone outside of themselves. For example, one person was pushing the grocery cart down the aisle in what I would consider the wrong direction. Coming at my cart, so to speak, on the wrong side of the road, until I had to swerve out of the way. Another person had stepped away from their cart, trying to scan the shelves for what they needed, very common and necessary strategy, do it all the time myself, but they had left their cart diagonally across the aisle so that nobody could get either way. These are disharmonious behaviors. They result from and sustain feelings of isolation, fear, and a lack of safety. The musical aspect of harmony can be a model for our understanding of harmony. We have probably either all played an instrument or sung with others. During this retreat, we've been chanting together. Chanting, playing instruments, or singing isn't always harmonious. And being in harmony, when it is harmonious, it doesn't necessarily mean that the music will be perfectly beautiful. It just means that everyone is tuned in and seeking to meld our voices with the voices or the instruments of others. We pay attention to not be the loudest or to not be so soft that we're not contributing to the group effort. We pay attention to singing at the same speed and the same rhythm as others. Our attention is broad so that we can be aware both of what we are doing and simultaneously be mindful that we are part of a greater whole. This is harmony. It means balancing what we are doing with the needs and direction of others. It's a recognition and appreciation of our connection with others. It's based on a fondness and a kindness towards others and a deep caring for ourselves. And just this morning, I felt that in the kitchen at breakfast, when there were many people trying to get their food, it was actually a beautiful example of harmony. There were a lot of people, everybody trying to do the same, but it was so clear that everybody was totally aware to, try not to get in the way and to be attentive to what other people were doing, and all without speech. It was harmonious. It was quite beautiful. Here are a couple of other mentions of this principle of harmony from the suttas. These are quotes. Skillful actions of body, speech, or mind support fondness, respect, esteem, harmony, and unity. An assembly where mendicants, so those who have gone forth, live in harmony, appreciating each other without quarreling, blending like milk and water, and regarding each other with kindly eyes. This is called a harmonious assembly. When mendicants live in harmony like this, they create much merit. Blending like milk and water. I find that a kind of beautiful image. We know how easily milk and water become blended, inseparable, indistinguishable. How can we join with others in a similar fashion? How do we relate harmoniously to others? Is it only through becoming indistinguishable? That can sound scary and not appealing at all. Hearing a teaching about blending with others like milk and water can raise some worry or resistance in our minds. Does this mean I become a doormat? Do I never stand up for myself? Is this suggesting I should be passive and let others determine everything? These are common fears, and they are misunderstandings of this teaching, in my view. So please be reassured that isn't at all what is being suggested. This is not a teaching about losing ourselves. It's a teaching about becoming wiser and more connected with our deepest intentions and how we can support our hearts and well-being in the most beneficial and safe way. A famous sutta offers a perfect lesson on harmony and how harmony is a means of protection and safety without losing ourselves. And perhaps you remember this sutta from last year, because only the other day I realized I had shared it last year as well. But it warrants repetition, I hope. It tells the story of acrobats who performed on the street during the time of the Buddha. And this is how it goes. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Sumbas, near the town of the Sumbas called Siddhaka. There, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Once upon a time, mendicants, an acrobat set up his bamboo pole and said to his apprentice, Medakatalika, come now, Medakatalika, climb up the bamboo pole and stand on my shoulders. Yes, teacher, she replied. She climbed up the bamboo pole and stood on her teacher's shoulders. Then the acrobat said to Medakatalika, You look after me, dear, and I'll look after you. That's how guarding and looking after each other will display our skill, collect our fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. When he said this, Medikatalika, the apprentice, said to the teacher, no, that's not how it is, teacher. You should look after yourself and I'll look after myself. That's how guarding and looking after ourselves will display our skill, collect our fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. Now, the teacher was not so crazy about being spoken back to in this way, but he suggested, well, let's go ask the Buddha, which of us is correct. So they went to the Buddha, and the Buddha said, it's just as Medikatalika said. Thinking I'll look after myself, you should cultivate mindfulness meditation. Thinking I'll look after others, you should cultivate mindfulness meditation. Looking after yourself, you look after others. Looking after others, you look after yourself. And how do you look after others? By looking after yourself? By development, cultivation, and practice of meditation. How do you look after yourself? By looking after others? By acceptance, harmlessness, love, and sympathy. Thinking I'll look after myself, you should cultivate mindfulness meditation. Thinking I'll look after others, you should cultivate mindfulness meditation. Looking after yourself, you look after others. Looking after others, you look after yourself. Recently, I've been quite grateful to be reflecting on these teachings about harmony, as they spoke directly to some dukkha, suffering, that had been present. Like all of you, I love my family deeply. The only close family I still have are my son, his wife, my daughter-in-law, and one grandson. I want what's best for them. I want them in my life. But it's also true, maybe like you, that they do things and make decisions I would not. Hopefully, I'm not the only one. And I'm not talking about terrible or even dangerous choices, just ones I wouldn't make. I think this is pretty normal, but it's also true it can be challenging. I can easily become convinced of the correctness of my views and feel a strong impulse to want to explain how they've become mistaken and should do things more in line with my views. If I follow this impulse, it seldom goes well, nor is it helpful to me or to them. Fortunately, my contemplation on harmony and cultivating it, and a recent reflection from Ajahn Sucitto really helped me put the brakes on inharmonious, unkind, unpleasant, and judgmental thinking and uninvited sharing. Here's what Sucitto says. The suffering of not being able to control, manipulate, and cope with life helps us learn to be more receptive to how things actually are. We have to learn to relate to people, beings, and things as they are. This brings integration and wholeness. Even if the initial contact might be unpleasant, we can experience the well-being of being present and free from ill will or dismissiveness. We can let go of any negativity or aversion or desire for a result or for things to go my way, learning to let go into a situation. What comes out then is a feeling of ease, a lack of friction. There's a sense of integration, of having a cool place in this world rather than of dismissing and feeling alienated and isolated. This is harmony. This is what it means to be in harmony, even when things aren't as we'd wish them to be. I also appreciate this bit from Ajahn Thanissaro on harmony. He says, here in the West, we have the idea of a romantic hero who stands up against the evils of society and battles corruption. In a situation like that, the ability not to get along is prized. But when you've got a society that wants to practice the Dhamma with a set of common goals, It's the other way around. Getting along is a good thing. You're not being asked to do anything immoral. You're not being asked to do anything against your principles. Most of the conflicts come down to a simple matter of personality and personal preferences, which really are not worth fighting over. This is why harmony outside is important, because it also helps induce harmony within. The two principles help each other along. So it's good to reflect on the way you're getting along with everyone else, to see how it helps or hinders your ability to get along with yourself. A lack of harmony inside leads to a lack of harmony outside. You don't need to read too much world history to realize what can happen when people's own inner problems get played out on the world stage. But if you can learn to follow these practices that lead to harmony, both inside and outside, the happiness that develops is something that doesn't give you any cause for regret in any way. We often think about external harmony when we think of that word, harmony between ourselves and others. But considering and cultivating internal harmony is equally essential. Internal harmony is the body and mind at peace with each other and with the world. If we neglect internal harmony, we might bring that same conflictive, inharmonious habits that produce external relationship conflict into our internal lives. Here's another thought from Tanisro. Peace on earth has to begin right here, right where the body and the mind meet, at the breath. Try to develop a sense of harmony at the breath. As you're focusing on the breath, don't push it too much, but don't wander away. Give it your undivided attention and see how it responds. If it responds well, stick with it. If not, you can change. Either change the breath or change the way you focus. The important thing is having a sense of harmony, because that's an essential part of peace. And you learn about harmony by experimenting inside. When you learn the quality of mind that's attentive, sensitive, observant, unwavering, kind, and can apply that inside, it's a lot easier to apply it outside as well. So internal harmony is cultivated in meditation. Ajahn Chah explained that harmony is the fabric that links all the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path and results in samadhi, a collected mind, a unified mind. So here's Ajahn Chah talking about how we use our meditation practice to develop harmony. Understand the Eightfold Path as virtue, concentration, and wisdom, the three parts of the Eightfold Path. Our practice is to make this path arise within us. When sitting meditation, we're told to close our eyes, not to look at anything else, because we're going to look directly at the mind or at the heart. When we close our eyes, our attention comes inward. We establish our attention on the breath, center our feelings there, put our mindfulness there. When the factors of the path are in harmony, we're able to see the breath, the feelings, the mind, and its moods for what they are. It's natural for it to be calm for a while, and then restlessness and confusion may arise again. When this happens, settle, breathe deeply again, and reestablish your attention on the breath. Just keep going like this. When this has happened many times, you will become adept at it. Mindfulness will be firmly established. As the mind becomes more refined, so does the breath. Feelings will become finer and finer. The body and mind will be light. Our attention is solely on the inner. We see the in-breaths and the out-breaths clearly. We see all impressions clearly. We see the coming together of virtue, concentration, and wisdom. This is called the path in harmony. When there is this harmony, our mind will be free from confusion. It will come together as one. This is called samadhi, a collected mind. So does this internal path in harmony support external harmony too? Any review of history undeniably demonstrates that conflict and violence have plagued humanity for as long as records exist. While we yearn for peace and harmony, the means to achieving it seem to have been elusive. A passage from one of the earliest suttas recounts how Sakka, the ruler of the heavenly beings, asked the Buddha. He said, beings wish to live without hate, hostility, or enmity. They wish to live in peace, yet they live in hate, harming one another, hostile, and as enemies. By what fetters are they bound that they live in such a way? This is a pretty familiar question, right? Clearly it was asked 2,600 years ago, and we're still asking it today. It's probably, maybe your children have asked you, or maybe you asked your loved ones or parents when you were a child. It seems so evident that we don't want hate or violence, yet it continues. So here's what the Bhikkhu Bodhi has to say on this question. He says, the Buddha's primary mission was to make known the path that culminates in inner peace and the supreme security of nibbana, release from the cycle of birth, old age, and death. But the Buddha did not turn his back on the human condition in favor of a purely ascetic, introspective quest for liberation. He looked with deep concern on struggling humanity enmeshed in conflict while aspiring for peace. And out of compassion, he sought a way to bring harmony into the troubled areas of human relations, to promote a way of life based on tolerance, concord, kindness. The Buddha taught and guided people who chose to follow his teachings as lay people, living in the midst of their families, working at regular occupations. He offered a broad ethic that applied not only to individual conduct, but to the relations between people living under diverse conditions, whether in monasteries or at home, whether pursuing their livelihoods in the marketplace or workshop, or in the service of the state. Under all of these circumstances, the chief ethical requirement was the avoidance of harm. Harm through aggression, harm by trampling on the claims of others, harm through conflict, harm through violence. The ideal was to promote goodwill and harmony in action, speech, and thought. My nose is dripping, excuse me. It feels to me as if every single sutta and every list the Buddha gave us was to promote goodwill and harmony, internally and externally. Bhikkhu Bodhi has an entire anthology of discourses from the Pali Canon titled The Buddha's Teachings on Social and Communal Harmony. But there are so many lists and suttas. How can we keep them all in mind when we are seeking harmony? Trying to do so and not knowing which one to call to mind can be overwhelming and feel impossible. So it can be tempting to just give up and simply do what's habitual and easy. But in my life, I found that doing what's habitual and easy is rarely harmonious. So I went to the suttas again. I found so many teachings relevant to harmony, and all made sense. But there was no single list that spoke explicitly and solely to harmony. So selecting from among all the mentions I found in the suttas, I decided to come up with and share my own shortened list of qualities that support harmony. So this isn't a definitive or ultimate list. It is simply my list of those qualities and attitudes that, as of my understanding right now, help me to support harmony in body, speech, and mind. I'm much more comfortable sharing one of the Buddha's lists than one I've made up, because I am far from an arhat. But it's also true that the point of these teachings is to make them our own. Until we are fully awakened, they will not all make sense. We are encouraged to take what makes sense now and apply it with as much honesty, clarity, and wisdom as possible. So here is my list of what to keep in mind to best cultivate harmonious actions of body, speech, and mind internally and externally. I find 4 things essential to remember my own deep wish for and intention to be in harmony with myself and others. Number 1, right view. I always try to stay mindful that actions have results. That is the teaching of right view. As in our daily chant, whatever actions I may do for good or for ill, of that I will be the heir. It's easy to think that what one person does doesn't make a difference. It's easy to discount small things and think that only big, important, major decisions matter. The teaching on right view, the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, would disagree. Right view would have us understand that everything I do matters. Everything. No action of body, speech, or mind is small or insignificant. Every single one will have a result for good or for ill. My responsibility is to pay attention to actions so that I may better know and recognize results. That's how I learn what actions to repeat and what maybe to discontinue. If I'm not mindful of actions and results, it will be impossible to determine what supports harmony and what doesn't. Number 2, patience. I often feel that everything rests on patience and my willingness not to react impulsively. When there is patience, I can allow any internal reactions to be fully known and give myself time to consider if they support my well-being or the well-being of others. This can be especially hard and counterintuitive in situations marked by conflict or hostility. But if supporting harmony and goodwill is genuinely my intention, then it's up to me to respond with patience, even when I might otherwise be triggered. I appreciate Ajahn Tadisro's humorous question. He says, "Who established you to be the National Bureau of Standards? Remember that you don't fall to hell through other people's actions unless you put yourself in hell by allowing unskillful mind states to arise." I am not the National Bureau of Standards. Number 3, goodwill, harmlessness, kindness. Patience gives me time to remember that I value harmony, not discord. Harmony depends on goodwill and the absence of ill will. The Buddha spoke of having goodwill as large as the earth and as cool and wide as the river Ganges. I don't need to approve of the actions of others for goodwill or kindness to be present. Goodwill doesn't need to approve of others. It's simply not wishing them harm. And that sort of well-wishing of others, even when we disagree, is a requirement, is necessary for harmony. And just as I seek to cultivate goodwill towards others, internal harmony requires goodwill towards myself. Here's a story of a famous monk. There's a famous story concerning Ajahn Kao, who was one of Ajahn Mun's earlier students. Ajahn Mun was a very famous Theravada Thai monk from the late 1800s. So Ajahn Kao was one of his students back in then. And Ajahn Kao tended to have a very strong and quick temper. He got upset at his mind one night because it wasn't settling down. So he started cursing his mind. Ajahn Mun sensed this, and the next morning said, "Don't do that to your mind. Don't curse your mind. It creates a really bad feeling inside. When the mind is obstreperous, when it's not settling down, do your best to urge it into concentration so that it's willing to settle down. Don't set up an inner voice of sarcasm or of putting yourself down. because that's destructive to the practice. Learn to speak in ways that are encouraging. Look for whatever scrap of progress you can find. Focus on that and say, look, I can do this. And if there are ways that you have been unskillful, learn to speak to yourself. Learn to train yourself in a way that actually has you willing to listen, so that the criticism doesn't add to depression, doesn't add up to a low sense of self-esteem, doesn't add to resentment, because those things really do get in the way of practice. Learn to speak encouraging words to yourself. Just as I said at the beginning, what the Buddha said all of his teachings were about, were urging, rousing, encouraging. And number 4, the precepts. It's funny how often things circle back to the importance of the precepts, which makes sense because the precepts support safety and harmony, both externally and internally. By living in accord with the precepts, we trust ourselves. And when we know others are abiding by precepts, we can trust them. The precepts are an example of how looking at things outside reflects back inside to our mind and heart. When we choose peaceful, harmonious actions externally, the result is a conducive environment for practice to cultivate peace and harmony in our hearts internally. So for me, remembering these 4, that actions have results, patience, kindness, and the precepts, helps me to lean towards greater harmony. Trusting that these 4 will result in harmony isn't based on a trust of my personality or my constructed self-views. It isn't trust in my personal abilities or lack of abilities. It's trust in connecting with heart qualities that are universal, not personal. It means I set aside both negative and positive self-views and instead put my trust in universal qualities of heart, like gratitude, generosity, compassion, goodwill, appreciative joy, stillness, peace. This isn't about me and developing my harmony. Returning to right view is a reminder that harmonious actions of body, speech, and mind also make a difference for others. Ajahn Nisro explains it like this. He says, it's like someone coming to join a group of people playing music, but that person who joins is playing in the wrong key or playing the wrong instrument for the kind of group it is. No matter how nice the rest of the music is, one person can really make a difference to make it inharmonious. So remember, harmony is something we work at. It doesn't just come naturally. He says, you may say, well, I'm just minding my own business. But that's a narrow attitude. Your own business includes thinking of the group. Our own business includes our relation to and impact on others. Just as was made clear in the Acrobat Sutta, harmony, happiness, safety, and wisdom requires attending to ourselves and also to others. Nurturing and supporting harmony by attending to others doesn't mean being a pushover. Doesn't mean walking on eggshells in order to fit in or be liked or to have everyone get along. That's fake harmony, in my view. That's untruthful harmony. That's harmony based on fear and limited self-views. True harmony, in my view, is always based on being present to things as they are with an open, caring heart. True harmony isn't based on presumptions about what others need or want or on our limited self-views about who I am or what I want. To use a musical analogy again, true harmony is the sound produced by the heart imbued with goodwill, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. When our hearts are open and at ease in any of these four immeasurable abodes, our actions of body, speech, and mind will be in harmony. Harmony with ourselves and harmony with others. When that is the case, we will be a source of joy and comfort to ourselves and to others. And to do that, we need to keep our intentions in mind. How is it we want to relate to life? Do we want to be in harmony with nature, with other living beings, with ourselves? If so, we can't expect it to happen automatically. The proof of that is easy to find. Everywhere we look, from the grocery store where we shop, to our workplace, to what we see and hear on local, national, and global news, and maybe even at home, there's lots of examples of disharmony. Disharmony is inescapable, as proven by my visit to the grocery store during a hectic holiday shopping season. I've shopped at that grocery store hundreds of times, and usually the disharmony isn't present to that extent. But perhaps due to the tensions in the country and the world and in people's personal lives, the disharmony, the absence of anything like harmony, was clear, was evident. So while simply doing my grocery shopping that day, this practice, my practice, allowed me to be mindful and to remember my intention for harmony. I could be aware of the tension in the air and do whatever I could to not contribute to it. I needed to remember my intentions and actively consider how my actions could contribute to greater harmony rather than feeding the simmering disharmony. I doubt anybody else noticed, but I did. I could move out of the way of that person barreling down the wrong side of the aisle. I could smile at people who looked distressed. My intentions helped me to stay even and unagitated, and maybe help bring just a tiny bit of harmony in a chaotic, busy grocery store. But it isn't about requiring or expecting others to return a smile. That's manipulative to me. It's simply establishing a bubble of harmony for this heart and mind to move through life with as much ease, goodwill, and compassion as possible, wherever I go. So one final quote to urge, rouse, and encourage from Ajahn Thanissaro again. So if you're looking for peace, this is the way you look. You don't wait for other people to get peaceful or for other people to be good, because you'll wait till your dying day and nothing will happen. You want to start right now. Goodness in the world, peace in the world, harmony in the world, all have to start right here, right now, with you. And you'll find, when you practice in that way, that you're experiencing it directly, right here. So thank you for your kind attention. Let's sit for about 10 minutes here.